outstretched hand, smiling.
Hi there, welcome back. I'm Max from Belonging Education, and this is part 3 of my series, What is School Belonging? I got to sit down with Dr. Oliver Ruff, a really inspiring educator from Evanston, Illinois, on the shoulder of Chicago. And he's an educator, mentor, and advocate for equity. For nearly 50 years, he has served as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal in Evanston schools, always guided by his well-known motto, high expectations, no exceptions, no excuses, preceding the charter movement of no excuses. Dr. Ruff has helped shape scholarship funds, mentorship programs, and leadership opportunities for young people across the community, out into the country. Today, we'll talk about what it really means for students not just to attend school, but to truly belong while still being challenged, supported, and seen. I want to thank Dr. Ruff for being here and thank you for listening.
So I think my wish and dream was just to talk to you about school belonging, because you, as I understood when I was a principal, when I came to Evanston, you got it all. You understood it all. This was not just about saying we're providing the best. This was about legitimately wrapping our arms around and always elevating the challenge and always holding our kids to that challenge.
Thank you.
So that's what I'm excited to hear about, is your philosophy on loving our kids so much that they rise to our expectations.
Yeah.
I don't want to take words out of your mouth or put words in your mouth, but what did you think of when you thought of school belonging as you were running schools, and even today? What are your thoughts on what it means to fully belong in an institution?
Well, first, thank you for not only the opportunity, but for expressing some of your information, because I was unaware of you having Black children, and again, able to relate to some of the Black experiences vicariously through your children. Because, to have a perspective as a white person is a good thing, but it's not necessarily the real thing. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I'm just saying that sometimes we go through much different things than another person can perceive. Because some people look at a Black person, and just because of the mere color of your skin, you are disavowed in some way or another. And I think that's what your children are sharing with you. Some of those experiences they experience, or they don't experience, they observe from others, whichever way it may be. But my experience coming from Georgia, and where I had parents and relatives were sharecroppers, would pick cotton and did the field things and walked to school because of the fact that they wouldn't allow us to attend the white school. We walked by the white school to get to our school, walked a mile and a half to get to school. So there, I think, was a subtle appreciation for school. And I say subtle only because of the fact that at that time, our focus was to try to do what we could to survive as sharecroppers. So staying home X number of days during the course of the year, we maybe went to school halftime and did the fields of the half. Even though we were young, we started out young. They put you out in the fields young. So it was one of those things. So by the time I got to Illinois, my mother had said that one thing she did not want to do is to, one, pick any more cotton, and to have us be put in that same experience where we're repeating what she had to go through and our family had to go through. So coming to Evanston, going to foster school, which was all Black, because they really were not accepting whites in other schools at that time. And if they did, it was a very minute number. And so that was one of the experiences. And also my cousins, I had two cousins and my sister and myself, we all came up together. And we had a relative here who sent for us. And that's the way our family migrated. We were part of the Great Migration through the fact that she was sending for us. We would come up and settle in, and with settling in, went to school at Foster, and all four of us were put back a grade. It was not necessarily a policy, but it was a practice. So Blacks were put back, and I guess the thought may have been particularly from the South, they may have thought that we were too stupid to comprehend. I don't know. They said that there was no policy at that time, but later on, and in talking with a few other individuals who came from a lack experience, had the same kind of experience. So it was one of the things that could have been discouraging, but we had some teachers at foster school who were white and who were Black that had us, as you said, and I think you're totally on target, had the love for education and the love for the students. And they were not going to allow us to fail. And they had certain demands. The community of the Fifth Ward, where the foster school is, everybody knew each other, Max. And one of the things that if you did something at school, woe be unto you when you got home. And so we'd rather get punished at school than to go to our home, because we knew our parents told us there is no time for playing around. We send you to school to get your education, and I don't want to hear something that you've done wrong. And they had implicit appreciation and confidence in the teachers. That's not necessarily the case nowadays. So I think that we revered educators. I came up to Illinois prior to 10 years old and started at foster school. Then we went back down south. My kindergarten teacher, Pat Allenberg, is still living. I still communicate with her. So, and as I said, she's white, but she remembered me. I remembered her. We've had that ongoing love and appreciation for one another ever since that time. We lost contact for a number of years.
Did you know how loved you were? I'm trying to picture the experience. How could you tell the difference between they love me so much that they're willing to be honest with me or stay in touch with my parents? How did you still maintain trust?
That's a great question. I thank you for asking. I think that my interpretation of that love was that it was an extension of my home. You know, the way my mother treated me, the expectations my mother had, the way the community embraced me, that love was all there. It was inculcated in the behaviors and attitudes of people around me. So you felt it, you saw it, you were part of it. And so that, to me, made a difference, because I developed and didn't know it at the time. My motto became high expectations, no exceptions, no excuses. I think I started developing the high expectations in elementary school because of the teachers. And then I got the other part, no exceptions, from my mother and no excuses from her. So I put those together and those evolved as from elementary to junior high school to high school to college. They just crystallized somewhat. But yet I felt within my being that love was in the school, that love was with my peers, because some of the peers I still communicate with that went to foster. And a couple just recently died. I went to one of the funeral. I couldn't go to the other one because they had some medical issue, but we still have contact. Some have done exceedingly well, some not so well, but that bonding, that closeness was still there. I don't see that as being the situation nowadays. As I got out of high school, went to college, to Baker University in Baldwin City, Kansas, played football, and I was told about 7 of us on campus. But then I went back and did a little research. They said there were more than 7, but if there were more, I really didn't realize that. They said about 18 of them. So out of a school of almost 800 students, I think it was. So even if there were 18, it was a minute number.
Right.
And I carried what I learned at Foster and some of what I guess got through the Skiles, and Everson High School, because I learned to develop relationships with my teachers, relationships with my peers, so that if something was going on, they would help me or I would help them. It was that continued connection. Now, in high school, it wasn't where I visited any of the white kids at their homes because it was not permissible. I played football with them and lacrosse and basketball and track. We did those things together. We loved each other, I think, from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go to their homes. Some of them came to my home, the apartment we lived in. So it was one of these things where there was a division of appreciation, understanding, and behaviors. But yet, that some of those same individuals that I graduated from high school, I still communicate with. We're getting ready for our 60th class reunion in September, and now I'm communicating with some of the males and females. As parents.
I have a question about that social dynamic because I think some of those lines still exist. They've gone underground. So parents, where I used to work on that part of town, white families wouldn't say we don't have black kids in our house, but they were the same parents who were calling the main office and saying, I'm seeing a 6-foot black male walking around. Who is this?
Yes.
And I would say, an Evanstonian or one of my kids, someone who just lives here. I mean, this is the world. So I wanted to ask you, I hear you had love for them, but were there rules or boundaries that made it harder to let your guard down or feel complete trust?
I think there were unwritten rules. I think the understanding was we athletically were bonded, but because of the unwritten rules that I go to your house or you come to my house, and knowing that you didn't invite me to your house, there was understanding that I couldn't go. I would ask you to come to mine if your parents were to permit you. You come and you would enjoy it, and we had a decent time. That didn't happen a whole lot because of the fact that I think that my mother, she didn't say that, but she, would do it, your friends over whatever time you want or whatever you want. And that occurred, but it wasn't a lot because I felt without the peers saying that they couldn't come, I felt the uncertainty about coming without parental permission. So I think that was there. I do think also, with going to their places, there was just not the receptivity by them and certainly by their parents. And you would hear them talking. And I had a couple of white friends who pretty much told me, sorry, Oliver, my mom, my dad just don't have persons coming over. And they didn't say persons of color. That terminology is that persons coming over who don't live in the community. So that kind of clarified what they without them saying it.
Can we jump to you deciding to become a teacher, deciding to and lead a school? How did you know that was the place for you? Sounds like you could have gone into sports, athletics. You could have been a community organizer. You could have been a political leader. I'm sure you've been tapped to do some of those things, but why schools? Why education?
Well, thank you for that. There were two things I wanted to be, and I don't know if it sounded good or what it was. I wanted to be a mortician or an anthropologist. I don't know why. I look back on that and I tried to figure out why was that. I don't know. I think that both of them just had some intrigue to me. Knew of some morticians in Georgia, and they were close to the family. And
But you protect history, you dignify humans. I mean, some of those we could draw a line. I'm sure, even what I know about you, there's some power in both of those with taking care of legacies. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. And so those are the things. But in Evanston, when I was, I think, in high school, I started working with the Evanston Recreation Department during the summers. And I was working with kids over at Sky Hill School, which became Kennedy Lab. So I got a chance to enjoy the youngsters, and they're younger than I, and started to enjoy interacting with them. And so that love for the youngsters remained with me. I was going through high school. For some reason, I continued on, and then the admissions director from Baker University came there to recruit some students. And Myrna Lazier talked with them about me athletically, and they wanted me to come and play football. And I said, if I go there to play football, I want to be in education. So I wanted to look at their educational program and looking at it, they had a good ratio. I think it was 1 to 15 or 16 student staff ratio. That was a good thing because I figured I might need that academic support. So that was a good thing. And then also going there athletically, I figured I had learned from Coach Lazier and the Everson football program enough so that if I went there, I would excel because I was the only black on the football team for 2 years. And there were some things that happened that were truly racist and they could have been discouraging. But I'm the kind of person I was gonna let you defeat me. And I think some of that again was inculcated in me at Foster School. And so I think that that kind of helped me drive through some of the things that I encountered. So I was one of two males in the educational program at Baker University. One was white and myself. I went through the educational program there, had some excellent professors. I loved my professors, and for some reason they loved me, and we developed a relationship. The president of the university, I got to know him quite well. I babysat for his kids. The chief of police there, he knew me. The athletic coach, he knew me. The dentist, they gave me free dentistry. And I said that to just say that those connections were learned as a youngster. And I perpetuated those when I got into the higher educational program. And so that helped me get through schooling and that helped me navigate through the educational program because I could focus on that, knowing that even with the other barriers that I was exposed to there was enough support for me to get through educationally. So I didn't have a great deal of financial responsibilities when I left Baker. Although they did not provide scholarships, they did have financial aid. And through the financial aid, some of the people there, because they seemingly liked my personality and they felt that I helped to improve the athletic program with my involvement there. So I think that was something that helped me so I could focus on education. And so with that, I student taught in Olathe, Kansas, and I was in elementary education. From there, I started teaching in Kansas City, Missouri at Switzer Elementary School. I had 43 students in my class, third grade. So part of the students that were put in my class, because some of the teachers didn't feel that they could handle them. So I became the person, disciplinarian and I hope educator as well. And I was about no foolishness. About the thing I made it. And if I made it, I know you're going to make it because I'm not going to let you fail. But I'm going to let you run over yourself or run over me or run over other students. And that was the attitude, and I developed a good reputation there. However, it was short-lived because I got drafted by Uncle Sam. Getting drafted at that time, they had the lottery. So I was number 156, I think, or 157.
Wow.
And I had to move back here. While I was in school, working there, I was in school, University of Missouri in Kansas City, UMKC, working on my master's. I was in some program there that was governmentally funded, and they paid you to go to graduate school. Not paid, you paid for your education. And I was working full time. My first year's salary was $6,000.
Wow.
That's what I made the first year I taught. And so I was in school there. And with being in school, I was doing quite well. So when Uncle Sam drafted me, I was angry. I didn't leave school. I figured it was a destruction of my life. I got myself together and I said, well, I'm going to go. That was during the time of the Vietnam War. So I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to do my time. When I get back, get my education completed through the military and get home. I had set in my mind benefits of what the military could be. That kind of propelled me to think differently. So I moved to Everson, stayed with my mother for a few days, getting ready to go to the service. On the night before I was supposed to report that morning at 7 o'clock, The night about, I guess it was about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, somebody knocked on the door. I asked who was it, and he said whatever the rate was. I asked, well, may I help you? He said, I need to talk with Oliver Ruff. At the time, we didn't have any reservations about opening the door with all the stuff nowadays. If some military person, open the door, and he established his rank again. And he said, I'm here to let you know that you don't have to report tomorrow. We're just delaying the time. What happened? I said, I plan on coming in the morning. He said, you've got a reprieve. I said, reprieve from what? He said, from the service. I said, well, what happened? Because I thought it might have been medical, or maybe I was insane, or whatever the case may be. He said, you're part of the lottery. The lottery number went up to 154. And I was 156 or 157. Don't remember exactly, but it was only 2 or 3 numbers higher. I luckily escaped that.
I thought you were going to say because you were a teacher. I thought maybe they were going to give teachers a reprieve.
I didn't apply for that. I could have, I suppose, but no, it had nothing to do with being a teacher. Although some people did use it. I just wanted to go on and get it over with because my best friend was in the military and he was in Vietnam. And what's so ironic about that, Max, is that I didn't get called in. And I guess it was a month later, they were airlifting him out of the Viet Cong area. He was shot in the head. And that was his last day in that area. And he was a vegetable for about 2 years. Now he and I talk at least once every 2 weeks. He pulled through. God. When that happened, I said that may have been some signal that I wasn't supposed to be there. I could have been there and gotten killed. So I stayed with my mother. And then after, I guess, a month or two, Mr. Hill called me. And Billy Cherry, had gotten in touch with me some kind of way. And they said that Mr. Hill wanted to speak to me. And I didn't know about what, because the only thing I used to think about Mr. Hill when I was in school, and if you do something, he'd thump you upside the head or he'd grab you. He didn't play, but a genuine individual who wanted the best for you. And all of us respected him. And so he said, Oliver, what I'd like for you to do is start substituting. I said, well, substituting where? He says, in Noyes Elementary School. I said, what grade level? He said, 3rd grade teacher over there. She's going out on maternity leave. And I want you to take a few weeks for her because she has to go out and she'll be returning. So I started substituting for her at Noyes. I think she was gone for about 3 months or so. And she was supposed to come back the following year. She didn't start back. And so I started that next year at the same grade level. With that, I stayed there for, I think, a couple months. Then I got another call from Mr. Hill. And I said, oh, what did I do now? He's putting over, he's getting ready to remove me, or maybe she's back. Before that, I had enrolled in National College. As I told you, I was going to school in Kansas City. And I wanted to complete my master's. So I was at National School. So Mr. Hill said, Oliver, I want to talk with you. And he said, I want you to come in. So I went in to see him. He said, well, I want you to be assistant principal of Skiles. I enjoyed teaching. I had no thoughts about administration, nor any desire. So I said, I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I haven't completed my certification. He said, well, not a problem. I want you to complete your certification, but prior to completing it, I'm going to assign you to Skiles. And when he said that, Mr. Hill, he's like E.F. Hutton. When he spoke, you listen, because I wasn't going to refute, his consideration. But he said, you'll be building assistant for student affairs. That was a non-official way of saying you're assistant principal without the certification. I had all the duties of an assistant principal. So that's the way we did that until I completed my certification. So being at Skiles for, I guess, about 3 years or so. Well, I was assigned there in 1971, 72, and I was there until 1976, so almost 4 years. I replaced Warren Cherry, who, with the Cherry Scholarship and all that. Warren Cherry was one of the most outstanding principals to ever come through Everson school system. He had a robust reputation, and he was working on his doctorate at Northwestern and doing all the other things. Talking about a community person, he was truly a community person. He was principal of Lincoln School when he passed. He was my mentor. I loved him. Our daughters are 2 weeks apart. They're still close. Warren died of cancer. When he was going through that, I was very, very close to him. What happened was my uncle passed in Georgia, and my daughter, she was maybe 6, 7 years old. My wife was working at Saks, so she couldn't go. But my daughter and I drove down. Well, I drove down, and she was with me to my uncle's funeral. And that Wednesday morning, I got a call from Cheryl, Warren's wife, saying, we called him Billy, those of us who knew him real well. That was his community name, saying that, Oliver, I got some bad news for you. I really wasn't thinking about that because I was already down there at the funeral. And what's going on? And I thought maybe she was talking about her mother or some of her family members. She said he passed 2 or 3 days ago. I know you won't be able to come back. I didn't want to bother you because I knew you were at your uncle's funeral. I wanted you to know that he passed. And I said, Cheryl, there's no way short of, death that I wouldn't make it back to his funeral. I got ready to come back that night. As I was coming through Kentucky, it was torrential rain. Water must have been a foot or so high. I was going to stop and pull over because I didn't want to jeopardize my daughter. So she, and I'll never forget this, she said, Dad, you can make it. She loved her some Uncle Billy. She said, you can make it. Her encouragement, to my high expectation, no exception of that, had gotten filtered through her. And she encouraged me to drive on. We got back late that night. Wow. I got maybe a couple hours rest and went to the funeral, and I was a pallbearer. When he was principal, he would go to every one of his parents' home during the summer to introduce himself to the new parents and to welcome again the returning parents. As a principal, I never got that involved. I did have community meetings, and I did go visit some of the homes. That was a very prominent thing for me because establishing that kind of relationship, and he started that from my perspective, that endeared me to a lot of the parents who had children with problems. So that was my way of showing my love for the children and the parents in the community.
Yeah.
And they saw that.
I wanted to ask you that because your line of no excuses, that means a lot, but there's been a movement in the era of high stakes testing where that phrase has been weaponized and almost gets associated with specifically over policing Black students, Black and brown students.
Right.
But when you're telling your stories, all I hear, and your daughter is proof of that, is love, obviously, relationships, 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 relationships.
Right.
So when you talk about the students who had trouble in school, how did you make sure that they knew you were still going to hold them to high? Because sometimes we see a child has an IEP, let them be. They're doing well enough. Or they're a behavior problem, as long as they have an okay day or less suspensions. I was talking to someone in school yesterday. I was concerned about, let's just say, a lot of tardies that I'm seeing. And when I gave the number, the person at the school said, oh, that's nothing. We have kids with 120 tardies. Yeah. And I said, are you okay with that? And, that was me being a little bit of an obnoxious parent. But I think what it sounded to me was a bit of culture of low expectations. Tardies mean something. When kids aren't getting to class, they're communicating something.
Exactly.
And so what do we do with that information? We just let it go and let it grow and say that's okay? Or do we pull them real close and say we see more that they're capable of? How did you make sure even students who might otherwise be left on the margins, how did you make sure they were all part of your culture of high expectations?
Well, first, you weren't an obnoxious parent. You were a conscientious parent. And that, to me, is what's important. Secondly, I personalized it to the extent that I felt your child was my child. So I felt what I would want from your child was no different than what I would want or expect from my child. That's kind of the way I tried to deal with the situations I was exposed to. And it was difficult sometimes because there were some parents that were challenging.
Mm.
Relationships to me are vital for your
Mhm.
success as an administrator. Trying to implement the mantra of high expectation, no exception, no excuses is a little bit more difficult nowadays
Mhm.
because, as you said, with the no excuses, there are some people who would say, as you cited, special ed with the 504 plans or IEPs or whatever they may have.
Mm.
They're on these plans, and by law, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Mm.
But you don't give up and say they can't learn, because if a child has dyslexia or has other problems, you know, again, for me, relationships make a difference. If I can get you to believe in me, get you to
Mhm.
believe in the fact that I can help you,
Mhm.
then you're going to put forth more efforts than somebody who I just talk about it and
Mhm.
and philosophize about it, but don't have any personal connection with. He or she is not going to do as well as a kid who may not have the same abilities, who believes in me. And sometimes I was firm,
Mhm.
very firm. You weren't going to run across, and you weren't going to be absent. If you were absent, I wanted the teachers, the parents, or teachers to call the parents and let them know that you missed John Doe or Mary Jane. Especially if it was more than 2 days, to see how they're doing. Let them know
Mhm.
you missed, and that made a difference.
At the end of the day.
Sometimes the kids at home, you as a principal, as the educator, the teacher, whatever, you sometimes showed love more than their parents. And they felt that. They performed differently for you than they might for their parents. And that's what I felt was an attribute that I did not want to give up on, because there are too many kids that were Oliver Ruffs that were lost because they didn't have the blessing that I had coming up. I
Mhm.
did father in the home that provided that for me. And my mother couldn't, because she's most time working three to four jobs a day doing
Mhm.
domestic work just to make ends meet.
Mhm.
So, you know, that that mentoring was not always there. That
Mhm.
support was not always there. Well, it was, but not visibly. I knew it was there, but my mother couldn't make it to the games or to the things that I was involved at. But I knew she loved me. I knew
Mhm.
she was there vicariously. And so that's what we had to go on. But that doesn't always happen unless you feel good about yourself. You feel
Mhm.
good with the person with whom you're working, and they manifest that love when times get tough, home, in the community, or wherever. I know I'm gonna make it through because I know I've got my teacher to help me if I need something, or to resource for me when I need something else.
Will you talk about the mentoring and the OAR that you formed?
Yeah, that was provided for me at my retirement in 2005. There were three of my friends. We grew up together. One was a cousin, another two were female friends. All of them are 10 to 12 years older than I am. We were in the same church. Now, they said rather than giving me a gift, they wanted to get a scholarship established in my name. They didn't have any money. They hadn't written up anything. They didn't do anything. They said, I want you to start it. So I took the few dollars that were given to me for retirement. I think
Mhm.
I had about $3,000. And they wanted me to write it up. And I wrote up the mission statement. I wrote up the objective. I wrote up the criteria for selection
Mhm.
and put it all together, and we started. The pretext for starting is that each one of us had to pay dues. I think we started off paying $100 a year, and we paid that into the scholarship, trying to ensure the fact that the monies wouldn't just evaporate.
Mhm.
Our first scholarship we gave two scholarships my first year, 2006. We gave two scholarships, each $200 a piece. So we kept doing that and kept building up the scholarship a little bit more from board members. Then we increased the size of the board. So the
Mhm.
monies were still there, but we were still giving scholarship and mentoring the recipients or the scholars as they went to the universities. So if they encountered any kind of problem,
Mhm.
we tried to develop a mentorship where, again, the relationships were essential. We had students who called, asked for prayer. We had
Mhm.
students who called who had financial needs. It has evolved in a different direction somewhat, but we still have the mentoring. 4 years, they get 4 years. And
Yeah.
every year you automatically receive the scholarship the next year if you provide us a current transcript for the
Okay.
previous year. Part of the acceptance to a scholarship, you had to be a C+ student.
Mhm.
You had to be one who has overcome some major obstacles in life, one who has struggled hard to overcome academics as well. So that was kind of, I tried to portray it based on what I had to go through. This year, we're giving 13 scholarships, $2,500 per individual.
Oh, look at that. Look at that growth.
$3,000. So
Do a plug. How can someone contribute? Is there a website that
oarscholarship.org. If you go on there now, you'll see it.
Dr. Ruff, I'm very, very grateful for your time. There you have so many more stories I know that I could learn from. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's good reconnecting with you.
An outstretched hand, smiling eyes, comfort humming through the halls, tracing lines I used to hide, found a lock that turned inside. It's more than just the floor we share. Watch the warmth begin to glow. Watch the warmth begin to glow. Watch the warmth begin to glow. Watch the warmth begin to glow.